Okay. All right. It's time to get started. And I always start with, who are you? Most people in America don't know who they are. Most people in America have forgotten, or never knew at all, where they came from and what the founding fathers of this great nation intended for you to have. Most people in America don't understand the difference between being an American and a U.S. citizen. Which one are you? How many in here are U.S. citizens? Raise you. You don't have to, don't be ashamed of it. I used to be. I was for a lot of years. And if that's what you want to be, that's great. If that's what you want to be. But that's not what you were born as. For the most part, most of you in here were born Americans. Now there's some here that are naturalized and have been brought in as citizens, but that's fine, that's great. You have the same rights that the rest of us have as far as the Constitution and Bill of Rights. But I want you to understand who the American people are supposed to be. And I want you to understand how to take that and how to understand it and how to walk and live in it. We were never intended to be the servants and the slaves of the government. That's a role reversal. We were supposed to be part of a republic form of government. Every time I hear one of these crooked politicians in Washington, D.C. say the word democracy, I get angry. Because what that means is they're socialists. And they know what it means. And that supports their agenda, and they want you to be socialists. But every socialist democracy that it was ever created across the world ended up being an oligarchy, and that's what we have today. We have 535 people running 300 million. And those 535 people that are controlled by a handful, even a lot smaller than that, are there for one purpose, and that is to steal your wealth. And that is it. That is their sole purpose, is to steal your wealth and transfer it into the hands of those that already own the majority of the wealth. And in the process, they get to keep some too. And that's what's going on in Washington today. Our nation was created to be a republic. Our nation was created we were supposed to be kings upon our land. We were never supposed to be slaves to this system. That was not what this nation was created for. And as I said, it makes my blood boil when I see your president. He's not my president. Bush wasn't either. And I'll tell you right up front, it has nothing to do with race. I don't care if he's a black man. I care what the integrity of his heart is. And he hasn't got any. Neither did Bush. We haven't had a good president that had any integrity in a long time. Probably Kennedy, maybe. Maybe Kennedy was the last one. Since then, you've had nobody that was an American as the president of this nation. Our founding fathers did a new thing. When they created this country, in 1791, they created a constitution. It was sent for ratification in 1787 to the Continental Congress, and they said, no, we're not going to ratify it because even though it's a good document that protects big government from the people from the excesses of big government, it doesn't support the individual rights of the people. And so they were sent back to the drawing board and told them, you got to do better than that. And the founding fathers knew the importance of your basic individual rights. And that's when the Bill of Rights was drafted, and then it was presented in 1791, and it was approved, ratified by all the people in Congress. And it became a constitution called the Constitution for the United States of America. Not to be confused with the Constitution of the United States, which is a completely separate document that came along almost 100 years later. So, the Founding Fathers knew how important it was to create a nation of kings because they came from Europe primarily, and they understood the power of a king. They understood that a king owned everything. He owned the highways. He owned the... You ever heard the little song about you take the high road and I'll take the low road? Well, that was true. In those days, the kings had highways. Everybody else walked and traveled the pig trails, they called them. The little unfinished roads. The king had finished roads, and you better not get caught on the king's finished road without a permit. That kind of sounds familiar today, doesn't it? We have to have a permit to travel the king's highways today, don't we? But those highways are supposed to be ours. The king owned the forest. He owned the timber in the forest. He owned everything, the animals in the forest. He owned the crops in the ground. He owned everything. He owned the water in the streams, the fish in the streams. And you couldn't take anything without the king's permission. You had to have the king's permission. Well, the Founding Fathers knew this. They understood that it was very, very important for us to have that same power on an individual basis across this nation, and that was their plan. That's what they tried. And they did a new thing that had never been done before and gave that power to the people that were born on the soil of this nation. When they were born, they had a birthright to be a king upon their land. And that experiment lasted for almost 100 years. About 100 years later, in 1868, 1868, after the Civil War, we call it the War of Northern Aggression. I don't know why they call it a Civil War. There's nothing civil about it. They do. We call it the War of Northern Aggression. And we'll tell you why it all happened a little later on. The Constitution was pretty much done away with and replaced by the 41st Congress when they created the United States. And they gave you the United States. Sounded a lot similar to the United States of America, didn't it? Think it might have been done intentionally? Absolutely it was. This was planned from the beginning. Now, the Constitution of the United States was different than the Constitution for the United States of America simply because they left out a couple of things. One of the things they left out was the 13th Amendment. Now, why was the 13th Amendment important? 13th Amendment did not allow lawyers to be government officials because they had a title of nobility. Esquire, you ever heard the term Esquire? That is an English title that's given by the Bar Association. And that Bar Association makes that person a foreign agent to the Queen. Actually, foreign agents for the Queen here in America. That's what they are. And if you're a barred attorney, you know that's true. You might not want to admit it, but it's still true. I can actually give you the law on that if you want to see it. And so they were foreign agents, so the Congress, the original Founding Fathers, understood. They didn't want the foreign agents to be in control of our government. And so they forbade, through the 13th Amendment, for anyone having that title of nobility, or any other title of nobility, to be an officer in our government. Well, the 13th Amendment was never repealed. It was never overturned. It was never set aside. There was nothing ever done to it. It's still in place today. Why don't we abide by it? Well, because when the new Constitution of the United States was created, they just left it out and replaced it. But it's never been overturned. Never been repealed. It's never been set aside. Nothing's ever been done with it. It's still alive and valid today, just like the Constitution for the United States of America. Now, I know that George Bush tried to do away with it, and Obama's trying to do away with it still, and many of your other presidents chiseled away at it. But they don't have the authority. Because in 1868, when that corporation was created, it was given an area of jurisdictional area of 10 miles square, which is 100 square miles. An area we know as Washington, D.C., which it kept until 1974 when Virginia took back some of their land because they didn't like some of the things they were doing. And so they took back part of their land. And today, the entire jurisdictional area of the United States is Washington, D.C., an area of 68 square miles, and its territories, like Alaska and Hawaii. Somebody might be surprised to understand their territories. American Samoa, the Virgin Islands, on and on. Puerto Rico. There are many. These are the territories of the United States. Texas has never, and I repeat, Texas has never been part of the United States. It's not today, except through contracts that we created when we agreed to join the United States Corporation. And that's how they have their hold over us. Now, I will tell you now, the United States is not doing anything illegal per se. They're doing a lot that's unlawful, but not a lot of illegal stuff because we give them permission. Because we have forgotten who we are. We have forgotten that these thieves in Congress are supposed to be working for us. However, they don't. And you're going to find out, and if you're a foreign agent here and you work for the corporation, y'all go get you a real job. Shame on you. I can't say much. I worked for them for 10 years. That's how I know about a lot about them. The bottom line is that they're supposed to work for us. Now, I'm going to be hard on the corporation. Somebody needs to. In fact, I don't believe, and I told some of my crew in Alabama this week, I said, don't tell people to call their congressman and tell them, I want you to vote for this or I want you to vote for that. Call your congressman and tell him, have the decency to get out of office and let us put the republic back in place. Step down. Because we're about to restore the republic whether they like it or not. The republic is being restored right now, and we're going to talk about that. But the corporation is on its last legs. The corporation is failing, and they know it. It's disintegrating within. And they know it's happening. They understand that. That's the reason they're raiding all of the funds right now and shipping them to other accounts, and a lot of them private accounts. They're stealing your wealth is what they're doing right now. That's all that's going on up there. It's a reorganization. We'll talk about why that had to happen, and we'll talk about all that. But the bottom line is that we have forgotten who we are, and we need to be reminded. We need to understand. Not only do we need to understand that we are Americans by birth, and I also say Southern by the grace of God, but we're supposed to be the leaders of our nation and not let other people take over our nation. And this is a hostile takeover of the American people. That's all that's going on. How can 535 people and a few of their cronies, and there's not that many of them, take over 300 million people? They can't when we get enough of it. They can't do it. They're not going to do it. They may try. There's going to be a lot of grief if they do. We're going to reestablish this republic. The bottom line is we have to understand that we are sovereigns, and we were born sovereigns, and we need to act like sovereigns. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go out and be obnoxious to people. That doesn't give you the right to be obnoxious. It doesn't give you the right to be arrogant. But it does give us the right to act like kings upon our land. But we're so used to asking for permission for everything. And I run into this every week. Got a lady call me yesterday. I told her, you don't know who you are. I've taught you, and I've taught you, and I've taught you, and I've taught you, and I've taught you. And you still think you got to ask for permission. I don't know how to explain it to you any more than that. I don't ask for permission. I do it to make you prove me wrong. You're going to have a heck of a time doing that, though, because I don't do things that are wrong. We're going to talk about some of the things and how this can benefit you. But I want you to thoroughly understand that we are the people that are supposed to run this nation. And we've been begging for permission for the crumbs from the Master's table for a long time. It's time to stop. It's time to realize who you are. And it's time for you to take back your heritage and take back your birthright. Now, your money has been stolen from you. Your property has been stolen from you. Everything's been stolen from you all your life. I'm going to show you where it's at and how to get it back this weekend. You will know how to do that. You will understand that this weekend if you'll pay attention. And if I catch anybody sleeping, I've already told them I'm going to throw something at them. No, only kidding. Shoot them? No. Yeah, okay, thank you. You got a whole bag under there? We're going to have some fun this weekend. I like to have fun. I'm not going to sit up here and just talk for 3 days. I'm going to interact with the audience as well. You guys could teach me something. Every time I come to a seminar, I learn something too. And I don't know it all, but I'm going to give you some things that are very powerful that will change your life if you'll put them into practice. The Constitution was a trust document. It was a document that guaranteed that big government wouldn't take advantage of the people. Do you think that trust has been breached? I think there's no question that it's been breached. In so many ways, it's impossible to count all the ways that it's been breached. But we need, as a people, to understand that we have the right. And the Constitution says that any time we have an oppressive government, it is not only our right, but our duty to replace that government with a government that is good to the people. It's our duty, not just our right, but our duty to do that. I think that the United States corporation has become that government that is oppressive. And I think it's time that the American people stand up and say, enough is enough, guys. Time for you to step down. It's time for us to put a righteous government in place. The people that are in Washington, for the most part, are nothing more than reprobates. They're absolute reprobates. They control the elections and the voting. The people in Washington do not represent you. They haven't represented you in a long time, in 50 years or more. They have not represented you. In 1944, Washington was deeded to the International Monetary Fund. We don't even own Washington anymore. That was done by the Bretton Woods Agreement. Why would we give the seat of our government away? No, we didn't, you're right, because it wasn't the seat of our government, it was the corporation. How many of you remember the little stink that they just had with Obama not being an American citizen? You know why it didn't ever come out? Because it's a non-issue. He doesn't have to be an American citizen to be a president of the corporation. They could have the Prime Minister of Russia and put him as the president of the corporation if they want to, because it has nothing to do with the United States of America. It has something to do with the United States corporation, because that is the government of the corporation. And every single law that has ever been passed by Washington only applies to the citizens of the corporation, those U.S. citizens. Now, how many of us in here have checked the bank applications for bank accounts, job applications, loan applications, and it says, are you a U.S. citizen? Go ahead and admit it. I know you have. I've done it. Used to do it too before I knew better. We joined the corporation. How many of you have driver's license? I'm going to get into that a little later about how to separate that. But the bottom line is we have entered into contracts, and contracts is what made us citizens of the United States corporation and gave them the jurisdiction over us. Now, the contracts are important. And we're learning more and more. Oh my goodness, there's so many contracts. We're studying that right now about that. There are more contracts than you can imagine. How many of you here have a library card? Did you know that's a contract? How many of you have a voter's registration? You know that's a contract? How about a marriage license? It's a contract. Driver's license? Contract. How about a professional license? Contract. A degree? Contract. Everything you do is a contract. Everything. And every time you check one of those little boxes that you're a U.S. citizen, you're just reinforcing the contract. That's all you're doing. Now, after 9/11 especially, it got to where people didn't want to do anything unless you were a U.S. citizen, bank accounts and all this kind of stuff. So we came up with this thing. We decided that we weren't going to check U.S. citizens, so what we started doing was writing across there, proud American. And they thought we were just being patriotic. And it went right on through. Didn't have any problems with that. But there's a lot of these applications, if you don't check U.S. citizen, they won't even process it. And now, all of a sudden, we're terrorists because we believe in the Constitution. As of last week, Janet Napolitano decides that we're terrorists because we believe in this country, not the corporation. Well, they can label me whatever they want to. The corporation's wrong and I'm right, and I can prove it. So, whenever people in America get to the point that I am, things will change. Things will change. Because we're not going to take it anymore. We're not going to take the abuse. I'm tired of seeing the corporations send their raiders out there and throw my friends in prison for absolutely no reason. Got a friend that was in jail for 18 days. Threw him in a cell naked. He had pneumonia. Threw him in a cell naked, wouldn't give him clothes for 2 weeks. Wouldn't let him take a shower, wouldn't give him a Bible, wouldn't let him see a lawyer, held him incommunicado for 2 weeks. You know what the charge was? He refused to receive an invitation to court. It was not necessary for him to even go. It was not a summons. It was an invitation. It was a notice that his father was having a hearing and he was welcome to come. And he refused it. And that's what he was put in jail for. Illegal as heck. Threatened to put him in prison for a year. Of course, now they've had a little change of heart because now they owe him $36.8 billion in damages. And he's going to collect. He's going to collect. He owns that county. He owns that court. He owns all of it. He owns the judges. He owns everything they have. Because they violated his basic constitutional rights. Because he knew who he was. And he's got documents to prove who he was. And he warned them not to do it. But yet they continued. And I can tell you dozens and dozens and dozens of cases where people have been thrown in jail for absolutely no reason. And they send 20 guys over there with body armor and automatic weapons, kick your door in, throw your wife down, stomp on their heads and skin them up and bruise them up and break their bones and all this kind of stuff, and then they go away like nothing's, like they're abiding by the law. These people are absolute tyrant lawbreakers. These people are lawless. They don't represent any kind of law. And these officers in these communities are going to have to be stopped. They're going to be stopped. We're not going to tolerate it anymore. When you get upset, the way I'm upset, things are going to change. And there are a lot of you here who have been insulated from it, and you hadn't seen it firsthand. I've seen it firsthand. I've been threatened. They even tried to kill me twice. I almost did it once. Tried to poison me in Knoxville. A guy unloaded a .38 from here to you, Wilson. 6 shots at me one night. A convict broke my neck with a shovel, trying to kill me. I set up in a deal to take me out because it wouldn't be involved in some of the corporate garbage that's going on, the corrupt stuff. And all it did was make me angry. That's all it did, it made me angry. And so now it spurred me on to try to make a change in America, and that's why I'm here before you today, because I know what they'll do to you for standing up for the truth. They threatened to come in my house. I was out cleaning my gun collection. And I don't have one illegal weapon in my home. I don't have any illegal weapons whatsoever. Everything I got, it's usually hunting stuff. I don't have assault weapons and junk like that. I've got hunting weapons that I used to hunt with. And one day a deputy came over, which I knew, to my house while I was cleaning my guns. And I had a whole grand total, probably half a dozen rifles and shotguns. Probably half a dozen of them. I had I had two 12-gauge shotguns, a couple of deer rifles, and two 22 rifles. Now I was really a terror to the planet with those guns. And I don't have no assault rifles or anything. This was just my hunting stuff. Took out of my gun cabinet one day that needed cleaning and oiling down and everything. So that's what I was doing. Comes over there and he said, "My God, the guns." I said, "I got 6 guns, hunting rifles, and 2 shotguns and 4 rifles. Had a 308, a 243, and 222 rifles. Boy, I'm a real terrorist." He said, "If they found out you had these, they'd probably come storm your house, take them away." And it made me mad the way he said it, like I was some kind of threat to society. I said, "Son, let me tell you something." I said, "I'm an assistant pastor in one of the largest churches in this town. I have never even had a speeding ticket. I've never been arrested in my life and put in jail for any reason whatsoever. I said, I've probably helped more people in this community than anybody ever has. I said, and you tell me that you and your cronies are going to come kick my door in and take my 6 guns that are completely legal." He said, "Well, nowadays you got to be careful." He said, "They consider you to be a terrorist." And I told him right then, and I said, and this is what I told him. I said, "Well, I'm going to tell you this. If they ever give you the order to come to my house," I said, "I've never hurt a soul in my life. Don't want to hurt anybody." I said, "I'm a nonviolent person." I said, "But I like my hunting guns. I used to go deer hunting once when I had time. I hadn't been in 2 years. But occasionally I like to go hunting." I said, "And if you get the order to come kick my door in the middle of the night," I said, "I want you to do yourself a favor, tell your friends too, to kiss your wife and your babies goodbye because you may not ever see them again." I said, "Because when you kick my door in, I'm going to consider that an act of war. And I will retaliate, and I'm capable of retaliating, and I am well trained to do that." I said, "So you be aware of that. So my advice to you is that if they give that order, that you call in sick or don't come." I said, "Because I'm not going to be able to identify who you all are if you come busting in my door in the middle of the night." And that's the way I feel about it. Now, I'd never harm a soul. I'm not a violent person. You could slap me in the face and I'd walk away from you until you put me in a corner I couldn't go anywhere. And then I'm going to break you in half. But the bottom line is that I'm a nonviolent person. I don't care to hurt people. I don't want to hurt people. But I don't want them hurting me either. What right does anybody have to break into your home in the middle of the night when you've done absolutely nothing wrong? It goes on every day, and until the American people stop it, it's going to get worse. I would be surprised if by the end of this year that the guns that you have in your hunting cabinet are not outlawed. They're working on that right now. You're certainly going to have to go register them, and that's the first thing. And if you give up your gun rights in this country, you will give up the rest of the rights. And why do I feel so strongly about this? Because I've watched in history. Do you know what always happens when they collected the guns throughout history? You ultimately lose your religious freedoms. Because that's the whole goal, is to take your religious freedoms. They don't want you to have freedom of religion. They want you to be part of their one world order. The New World Order is not what I want to be part of. Now, you can be part of it if you want to, but I don't plan to be. Don't have any intentions. And I got off on a rabbit trail, but y'all have to just overlook me. Get over it and get used to it. Because you might hear it again. Okay. The United States is a corporation that was created by the 41st Congress in 1868, as I said before. But who really rules America? Well, ultimately it is the Crown, but it's done through corporations. Corporations rule America. Now, corporations rule America in a lot of different ways. primarily through the abuse and misuse of your money, they extract your wealth through a system of laws that they pass that create enriched private corporations. And the way they do it is this. A big corporation, and you're going to see this happen very soon, they'll say, well, you know, we've heard about this bird flu over there in Europe and China, and it's killed quite a few people, and, you know, it could come to America because of the transportation system that we have today. And, you know, we wouldn't want the American people to really be affected by this, so what we need to do is create a vaccine. And so one of the big drug companies will send their lobbyists down there to Washington, talk to some of the key Congress people, and say, you know, we need to protect the American people, and what we need to do is for you to pass some laws that will give us the funding to create a vaccination for the bird flu. And so all of a sudden you'll see the news start hammering the possibility of a pandemic or outbreak of the bird flu. And after they've done that for a few weeks, Congress will have drafted a bill, these Congress people, and of course they'll get their perks for doing it from the corporation. And the next thing you know, they'll present a bill to Congress, and they'll say, well, we need $5 billion to go out and create this thing, and so they'll appropriate the $5 billion to this corporation, or whatever the amount is, and they'll go out there and they'll create the bird flu vaccination, or whatever it's going to be. Well, when they get the appropriation of money, they'll keep the drum beating slowly, but just before they get it ready to release to the public, all of a sudden there will be another big media broadcast or media blitz on the bird flu. And what they'll do is they'll create in your minds the fear that you really need to protect yourself against this bird flu, so you need to go down and get that vaccination. Well, and what's wrong with that? The drug company's protecting the American people. Well, nothing in itself except for the fact when you go to get that vaccination, they're going to charge you anywhere from $30 to $60 for something you've already paid for. And that's the problem I have with it, is they're double dipping. There you go, we're going to dance. That's all right. But the bottom line is that we're being used in that way. Now, they're using the emotional response goes back to the Communist Manifesto. All 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto have been at work in your country for a long time. And one of the things they have used over and over and over again is called problem, reaction, solution. That means you create a problem, and while you have people in an emotional state, they don't think rationally. When they're afraid, they don't think rationally. And they'll accept anything for safety. Oh yeah, we're going to give you a problem, then all of a sudden we're going to give you a solution to the problem that's going to calm your fears, and people will latch onto it like a drowning man does a life jacket. And it's been used over and over and over again on you. And all of the American people think that they're doing a great job. Oh, they're protecting us. Which one of the founding fathers says, what was it that said? Was it Hamilton, or which one was it? He said, any people that will give up safety, now give up their freedom for safety and security, deserve neither. You got to learn to think past what you're seeing on the news. The news is used totally to manipulate you. Every single broadcast that you see on the nightly news, on NBC, CBS, ABC, or whatever channel, Fox News, every single statement, every single thing that they say of any national importance whatsoever, if it has any national importance at all, it has been screened by the White House press secretary, and they were told what they can and cannot say. Every single one. You remember Connie Chung? Vaguely. I remember when she was a very popular anchor woman. She reported a story that wasn't approved by the White House press secretary. And guess you hadn't heard of Connie Chung in a while, have you? She lost her job the next day. They punished her, and they made an example out of her so that the others wouldn't do it. She can't get a job in broadcasting anymore because she's been blackballed. They absolutely can't do it. Nobody will touch her. You remember Imus? In the nappy-headed hoe business? Remember that? He didn't get fired for that. I talked to Ken Reynolds. It's his producer, by the way. I had lunch with Ken Reynolds right after that. Ken was the guy I met at one of the seminars we were at. He came. And we had dinner. We were sitting around talking. And he was fascinated about what all this stuff I talk about. He had heard something about it, but didn't know much about it. And we got into a 6-hour conversation one night, and had dinner together and visited and had a group of people, and we had a good time. But Ken was a producer for the Imus show, and I asked him, I said, Ken, I said, tell me the truth, why was Imus fired? He laughed, he said, you didn't buy that? I said, no, I didn't buy it. I said, it had to be more than that. I said, he said much more obnoxious things than that, nobody ever complained. I said, so I know that wasn't the reason. I said, what was the real reason? He said, well, he said he had gotten a hold of some information about 9/11, about the truth of what really happened at 9/11. And I know all y'all believe that terrorists did it, and that's fine. There's not anybody here that believes that it was an inside conspiracy, I'm sure. But the bottom line is that he was going to reveal some facts about what happened on 9/11. And his producer found out, and they told him he couldn't. He said he was going to do it anyway, so they cut him. Just like that. Because they couldn't let it out. Because he had facts. He had truth. Oh, God forbid that you share any truth on the national media. Can't be doing that. And I'm not a conspiracy nut. I don't even care about the magic bullet theory and who shot J.R. He's dead. I mean, John F. Kennedy, who J.R. Not much difference. Not a whole lot of difference, to tell you the truth. Who shot J.R.? Whoever shot JFK, yeah. I never did find out who shot J.R. I didn't watch it, so I don't know, but I heard about it. But who shot JFK doesn't interest me, and I couldn't care less because he's dead. You know, it was a tragedy, and he probably shouldn't have been shot, but he was, and it was an inside job. That was another false flag operation. That's all it was. And that's what we call these, false flag operations. And if you want to do a little research, you'll find out it's been done many, many times. Going all the way back to the War of 1812 when the Maine was it was an accidental explosion actually, and the Maine was used to go to the Spanish-American War, and our government knew that it was an accident and they made it all up so that we could go to war. They wanted to go to war with Spain, and that was in 1812. So we know we've been doing them that long. How many of you heard about the Liberty, the ship that Lyndon Johnson ordered sunk, one of our own ships? And this is, if you don't believe me, go to the LBJ library. They've got the whole thing on tape. You can go listen to it. Where he told the admiral to sink the GD ship and kill everybody on board, our own soldiers. It's on tape. LBJ talked to the admiral right there. I've heard the tape. How could a president of this country do something like that? But he did. How could you kill your own soldiers that are sworn out there risking their lives to protect your own borders? But he did, because they needed to create a problem that would get a reaction so they could give you a solution. 9/11 was no different. Now I'm going to tell you why 9/11 happened later. But anyway, and I'm not a conspiracy nut. I will tell you this. If you believe 9/11 was done by terrorists, you're absolutely right. It was. But it wasn't done by Middle Eastern terrorists. It was done by domestic terrorists, and some of them worked in the White House. And that's the bad. I would go to federal court with evidence that I could prove right now, and I believe I could win the case in front of an honorable jury. That's true. I believe that. I know just a little bit about that incident since I understand properties of all this fire, because I used to be a fire marshal for the state of Florida. I'm a fire inspector, trained fire marshal in an earlier career that I had. And when we were studying architectural design with the Fire College, we studied the diagrams for those two buildings. Just we could have picked any buildings we want, but we wanted those, so we did. And then we studied the design of those buildings and the makeup of those buildings. Now, and I will tell you this, it's absolutely impossible for airplanes to take those buildings down. It can't be done. They were designed for it. They were designed for multiple hits and stand. They were designed for it. So I can tell you now that the airplanes didn't do it. Now what did do it? Well, I got my own theories about that. I can't prove it, but it could be proven. But I'll promise you one thing, it wasn't done by Middle Eastern terrorists. That was just another reason to go to war. They wanted to sell the war to the public, and they had to do something to get your attention, and that's what they did. It was called a false flag operation. And that's all that 9/11 was about, was to manipulate the American people and con you into spending billions and hundreds of billions of the wealth of this nation on a fictitious war to enrich private corporations. You ever heard of Halliburton? Yeah, it might be a little bit of connection there. How about Unocal? Anybody heard of Unocal? Oh, might be interesting to find out that they'll probably be putting a pipeline over there. A lot of interesting little developments over there. Okay, but corporations within the United States and even foreign corporations manipulate you and I to make a transfer of our wealth. That's all it's for. It's transferring your wealth to other people, and that's what's going on right now in Washington. But the lobbyists in Washington, D.C. are the ones that operate within these corporations to manipulate our Congress into spending your tax dollars and enriching that corporation. And that's why lobbyists, when we reestablish the republic, I've already told some of the guys that's involved, I said the first lobbyist I catch, he's going to get capped right there in the borders of Washington, D.C. He is going to get capped right there on the spot. He's going to get his trial and execution right there. We will not tolerate lobbyists in Washington whenever we reestablish the republic. Any person that's on the president's cabinet that does a deal with a lobbyist will be executed. And that's what we've told them. I think it's going to happen. We're not going to tolerate the same type of abusive system that we have right now. It won't ever be tolerated by our republic. And you say, well, that might be extreme. Well, extreme measures get results. I had a fellow one time who used to argue with me. He said, the death penalty is not biblical. I said, well, God said it is. I mean, regardless of what you think. I said, God said it's biblical. He said, well, it doesn't deter crime. I said, I beg to differ with you there. He said, how does it deter crime? I said, well, it's like this. I said, if that guy, when he's 21 years old, commits a heinous crime against somebody in the public and we execute him for that crime, I said, it does two things. He never commits another crime, and he never has offspring that will commit crimes. So I said, it does deter crime. I said, and the other people that see that might not want to go down that road. It does deter crime. So, but one thing for sure, when you execute one of them, they don't commit any more. That's for sure. That's a for sure thing. Had a convict come to me one time. He was accused of some deviant sexual crimes. And he was complaining because he got 15 years in prison. And he was talking to me one day, said, it just isn't right, you know. He put me in prison 15 years for raping a woman and all, and he said, it just isn't right. I said, you're absolutely right. I agree with it. Oh, really? I said, yes, sir. I said, I think you absolutely did you wrong. He said, well, I'm surprised that you feel that way, Officer Turner. I said, well, I think they did you terribly wrong. I said, if it had been me, I'd have executed you. I said, they shouldn't have put you in prison. They should have just popped a cap in you and let you live and buried you. I said, because it's terrible. They're doing you wrong. You know? I said, 15 years for raping a woman? I mean, my goodness gracious. They should have just executed you. Yeah, right, they solved the problem. But I'm mean. If it was your daughter, you'd feel the same way. That Doc told me about, he told me about a friend of his in California, didn't believe in guns. No way, no guns, no guns, no way in the world. We wouldn't have guns in our house until his daughter got raped. A week later, he was out buying a gun. Well, why did he want a gun now? Because he found out it might come in handy. Now, I'll tell you right up front, I've had to use a gun 3 times in my life to protect my life. But you know, I've never had to shoot anybody yet. But I've had 3 instances where I had to pull a gun and let them know that I was willing to send them to see Jesus or wherever. I asked one of them, I said, son, do you know God? What do you mean? I said, if you don't, you better get to know Him because you're fixing to see Him face to face. He had a change of heart. He decided he didn't want to rob me after all. But I've never had to shoot anybody. But I have 3 times I could have been killed, and I would have been robbed a couple of times. I used to carry a .357 Magnum in my car. That long. Big old hog. We call them a hog leg down here. It was quite impressive. When you look down the barrel of that thing, I bet it looked like it was about that big around. Had a guy one time, he was broke down on the side of the road down in South Florida on this big old long stretch of road. Wasn't nothing on it but a few orange groves and some crops and stuff down there. And they had a few houses scattered through this area. And I'd seen this guy around, didn't know who he was, never met him, but I'd seen him around a little bit. He worked out here in that area. And he was driving a 4-wheeler and he broke down. It was getting late in the evening, so I felt sorry for the kid. It was several miles from anything, so I stopped. And I mean, he was a man. He was in his 20s probably. I called him a kid, but he was a young fellow. And I stopped to help him, see if he needed a ride, because it was obviously he was pushing this 4-wheeler, and it was a long way to push. And so I asked him if he needed a ride, and he said, yeah. So he got in my car, and I said, well, where do you want me to take you? He said, I live back down here in this orange grove, and there people did, so I didn't think much about it. And I pulled down this dirt road, and I got down there about a mile, and he reaches in his pocket and pulls out a .25 automatic. And he starts talking about robbing me. So I knew a little bit about guns, and I knew that .25 automatic, that they put the magazine goes in the butt of the gun, the handle. And he didn't have one. It was missing. He didn't realize it yet. He had dropped the clip somewhere. And so he reaches over there, and the top of the gun slides back like this to put a chamber around. And so he did that. So I knew now that if he did have a bullet, he just cleared it. And so he had an empty gun. Well, he hadn't realized this yet. He was talking his trash about robbing me. And so I was easing down and said, well, what am I going to do here, It's kind of not a situation you want to be in. So, but I realized he had an empty gun, and he hadn't realized it yet. So I just reached under my seat, and I come out with this hog leg. Like I say, it was impressive. 7-inch long stainless steel .357 Magnum. And so I pulled that thing out, and I bet it looked like it was that long to him. But I pulled it out, and I held it right here. And about the time I pulled it out, I could see it in his eyes. He realized he didn't have any bullets. And I told him, I said, son, if you ever try to rob somebody, I said, do it with a real gun next time. And he looked at me, he said, mister, if you'll stop this car, I'll get out right here. I said, I think that's a very good idea. And he got out of that car in a hurry. But I didn't have to shoot anybody, but, I could have been killed. What if he had a knife? That would have been the next logical choice, and I wouldn't have been able to protect myself. But that S&W was a very impressive weapon. It was nice. When my brother first went to work for the police department, they asked him, what kind of gun do you want issued to you? He said, I want a .357 Magnum Smith & Wesson. And they said, why in the world do you want to carry something like that? He said, well, it's like this. He said, if I get nervous and miss, he said, I want the noise to scare them or the wind from the bullet to knock them down. Let's talk about what time is it? A few more minutes, we'll take a break. Let's talk about a republic versus a democracy. Who can define what a democracy is? Okay, mob rule, majority rule. That's right. That's right. That's correct. Exactly right. But that was not the way we were created. We were supposed to be a republic. Now, one guy told me, he said, a democracy is two wolves and a sheep discussing what's for dinner. And that's about the truth, because if you got more wolves than you got sheep, the wolves are going to take the sheep, and they're going to take what the sheep have. And right now, that's what we have in Congress, wolves. And we're out here the sheeple. And the wolves are trying to take what the sheeple have, and they're doing a very good job of it right now. But we're supposed to be a republic, and in a republic form of government, there's a well-armed sheep, and the wolves better watch it. And so don't ever let them convince you that it's the best policy for you to give up your guns because it's safer for you. That is not true. The wolves are trying to get the guns for a reason. Because they want the sheep. They want what the sheep have. And if they get your guns, they're going to get what you have. And it's that simple. And it works every time. Has in every society in the world that's ever given up their guns. They gave up their property, and ultimately they gave up their religious freedom, and ultimately a lot of them gave up their lives. And it will happen here in America if we don't stop it. But that's the next step. Have you ever seen the World Constitution? Have you ever read it? What's the First Amendment to the World Constitution? There shall be no guns. No guns. Only people that will have guns is military and law enforcement. Nobody else is allowed to have them. You say, well, that's not going to happen in America. I just came through a town yesterday, the day before yesterday. It's got it posted, no guns. Right here in America, right on Interstate 10. No guns. They'll arrest you and throw you in prison for having a gun. You're not allowed to have one, period, in that town. Well, I thought we had a right to bear arms. What happened? So they've got it now, they've got it going on now, that it's in your best interest to give up your guns. Giving up your guns down there will protect you from the drug dealers. It's one of these border towns. And they're telling people that, and people are buying it. Giving up your guns is going to protect you from the gun dealers that have guns. I was born at night, folks, but it wasn't last night. You need to think about these little things they're telling you because they don't make sense. But they'll convince you they do if you keep on. A republic form of system, a system of government, is basically a system of government in which you have the right to do whatever you want to do as long as you don't cause harm to your neighbor. That is the law that God intended for this country to have. That is God's law. You go back and look at the Ten Commandments. If you didn't do anything wrong to somebody or damage them or their property, was there any law broken? It goes back to the basic Ten Commandments. Very simple. Very simple. Just do what's right and there's no law against it. There's never been a law against doing what's right until today, of course. In this corporate system, you can do right and still get in trouble. We live in what I call an upside-down society where right is wrong and wrong is right. Now, if the political agenda of the day supports abortion and you try to stop abortions, then you're guilty of committing a crime. If you protest abortions, people killing babies, which is no less than a satanic sacrifice, that's exactly what abortion is. It's the same thing God warned ancient Israel about. Don't offer your children to idols, and don't offer your children to the god Molech to be destroyed. He told them not to do it, and He's telling us not to do it too. But yet we've got a sanitized version of it today. We can do it by doctors. We don't have to go lay them on an altar and slit their throat. We let doctors do that today. How many million babies are aborted in this country every year? I don't know. I don't know the figures. Some of you may. It's too many. And God's going to judge our nation for allowing it to happen. That's coming. Judgment, because we can't kill innocent blood without judgment. It doesn't happen. And this is pure murder when they abort these babies. It is nothing less than murder. And it's legalized murder. Well, what's the difference? Okay, now, we abort babies. Now, there are reasons for aborting babies, they tell me. Maybe they got Down syndrome. Maybe they got, problems. Well, then why don't we euthanize the elderly that are no more good? They're trying to do that now. They're trying to pass laws where the elderly can actually be euthanized. In fact, it's already been taking place in some places, I understand. In some of these hospitals and elderly care facilities, it's already happening. But they're trying to pass laws that give doctors permission to decide if they don't agree with the quality of your life, they can just snuff it out. They can just go ahead and kill you. Well, who made them God? Why should they feel like they have the right to do that? But yet that's going on. These kind of things are being discussed in your Congress. You got to understand, and we'll talk a little later on about why that is, why that's happening, why the abortions are important to them, why the euthanization of people that are not necessarily a benefit to society anymore are important. We're going to cover some of that. But in that republic form of government, we have freedom. You have the freedom to go out and produce a product and benefit from your labors without it being stolen from you by an oppressive government. You have the right to wear what you want to travel where you want to freely, to attend any school that you want to go to, as long as you can afford to go. Get any level of education that you want. In a republic form of government, it promotes an individual having the right to excel. A democratic system of government does not do that. A democratic system wants us all to be sheeple and think alike, do alike. Don't break out of the box. For God's sake, don't do anything that's different than anybody else. And ultimately, they want us to dress alike, talk alike, think alike, be alike, and anybody that's not just like the group is going to get cut from the herd. And you're going to be labeled, and this just came up in the news the other day. Now they're saying people, and this started in a foreign country, but I'm sure they're going to capitalize on it. Anybody that doesn't agree with the government, they must have a mental problem. This was on national news just 2 or 3 days ago. I see where that's going. So if I could declare you mentally incompetent and declare you a ward of the state, I can do anything I want to with you. Judges have been doing that for years. I talked to a man the other day. They did that to his mother and took her estate away from her. Crooked lawyers and judges. Declared her mentally incompetent. And just took what she had. She was a very wealthy lady, too. Her kids got nothing. The lawyers and judges got it all. The bankers. And that's what the kind of thing that's going on in our nation. You need to understand. When you listen to the news, look through what they're saying. Look and see if you can figure out what the agenda is, because there is one. I was trained by FEMA. I worked for FEMA. I worked for Emergency Management, which is the local arm of FEMA. Didn't work for the national organization, but I was the director of Emergency Management in a Florida county. And I worked hand in hand with FEMA all the time. I was a part of that system. You have national directors and regional directors and state directors, and then you have local county directors. And I was a little guy. I wasn't very big in FEMA, but I got to rub elbows with some of the big guys quite often. And got up in the system and got to see it. It made me sick what I saw for the most part. I was involved in Homeland Security and helped write some of the laws. In fact, I developed what's called the Coop and Cog plans. I wrote those for the state of Florida. And they're still in use today. And you may have heard of the Coop and Cog lately. It's been in the news lately. And what that is continuity of operations and continuity of government. They call them Coop and Cog plans. And so I helped write those for the state of Florida. And they liked my format, so they had drafted them across the state. But the bottom line is that this system of Homeland Security, and all we're going to talk about a little later, is nothing about Homeland Security. It's about control of the people. That's all it's about. But in a free type of government, we don't need leaders that are socialists. If your leader's a socialist, your nation is socialist. And every time one of them says the word democracy, he is a socialist. Every single one of them that says the word democracy out of their mouth, that we are a democratic system of government, is absolutely 110% socialist. They have a socialist agenda and a socialist mindset. When I was trained as a public relations officer, we were told that the media was to be used to manipulate the people, basically. We were taught how to do it. We were trained to do it. Had a guy I worked with down in South Florida. He was the head public relations man, and I was his assistant. He did most of the broadcast, but occasionally I'd get one when he didn't want to do it. And so they put me on the news, and I'd do my little thing. And when we would have an incident down there, it was kind of funny. And I liked the old guy. I really did. He's a real nice fellow, but he's a company man. He's just a company man. They told him what to say, and he said it. And so we would have an incident, and we'd call in our little briefing to see what we were going to put on the news. And I would always, he would always say, "What we going to tell them tonight, guys?" And I would always say, "Well, let's try the truth, Lee." And he would say, "Oh, they can't handle that. We got to do better than that." And we would make up a story, put it on 6 o'clock news. Now, sometimes it's important not to put the truth out in the news. And this is an investigative tool. And I laugh every time I hear a report about somebody robbed a bank or did some kind of crime, and they're driving a white Ford pickup truck, and they're wearing a blue hood shirt, and it's a white man, 6'3" tall, and weighs about 175 pounds. And I laugh every time I hear that, because when you find out the truth of the matter, it probably wasn't a white Ford pickup truck, and it probably wasn't a white man 6'2". He was probably 5'8", and he was probably driving a blue Chevrolet truck. And the true story. But they put that out, and the reason it makes sense to do that, because when you want information from the public, and you put out a national news broadcast, you're going to have about 2,000 people who are going to call in saying they saw it. Because people want that 15 minutes of fame on the news. They want to be on the news. They want their picture on TV. And so you're going to get all these calls that saw that white Ford truck, but you're going to get one call or maybe two calls that says, "Hey, man, I don't know where you got your information, but it was a blue Chevrolet truck." Well, that's the people you want to go talk to, because they know the real story. They had to see it, because it hadn't been put out anywhere else. And so that's how we do that for an investigative tool. So every time I hear one of those reports, I just laugh. It's nothing like what you're hearing. Usually the story is completely different, because then they do that intentionally. Talk about freedom versus socialism. In a republic form of government, it supports freedom. In a democratic form of government, it supports socialism. Tell you what, let's take about 10 minutes before I get into this, because it's time to take a break. I imagine everybody needs one.
This thing is still on there. I
I need to do my disclaimer, I guess. I should do that. Okay. All right, let's settle down so we get started back. Got a lot of folks here, so respect everybody and please be quiet because the noise, background noise, keeps me from being able to, the people in the back to hear me. Okay. I like to do a disclaimer, as most people in this business have to do. I want you to understand I am not an attorney. I don't have a Juris Doctor. I don't have any of that. And what I'm telling you in this seminar, I don't give it as legal advice. I am an internationally licensed lawyer through the Cherokee Indian Nation. I've got the documents to prove that. However, I'm not a legal professional, don't claim to be. I couldn't be a barred attorney. In fact, one judge asked me if I was a barred attorney, and I told him, no, sir, I'm not barred from telling the truth. He liked that, really. But the bottom line is that I am somewhat trained in law, I suppose. I win. That's all I can tell you. I do win. And I'm going to show you how to win because I abide by God's law and the maxims of law, and so do the courts. They just don't want you to know that, but they have to. I'm going to show you how to force them to do it and how to make them pay if they don't. Because we learn that the Achilles heel of the courts and these agencies is their bonds. And if you can take their bonds, you can deal with them. Because once you take a lawyer's bond or a judge's bond or a clerk's bond, they're out of gas. They're through. Their career's over. So they've got to sit there and decide if dealing with you is going to be worth their career. And that's what we're going to teach you about this weekend. Now, I have never lost in court, actually. Never. In over 20 years, I've never lost a case in court. Now, I've been in dozens and dozens and dozens of cases, some civil, some criminal, a lot of them small cases like traffic. Been in a number of different kind of cases I've helped people with, but not as an attorney or a lawyer. I just, they asked me questions and I tried my best to help them because they couldn't afford an attorney or a lawyer. And we've never lost. Never. The biggest one I did, we just finished this year, was the one against the 12 attorneys, a bank, communications company, and a federal court in Alabama. And I am happy to say that the Attorney General has reviewed the case and he moved it up, the criminal charges, pushed them up to the federal level to go before a federal grand jury to see if they're going to indict these people. One of them is a federal judge. That is a big deal when the state's Attorney General can't find a way to dismiss your case. Our criminal complaint, I have a verified affidavit of criminal complaint on file. It has been remanded to the U.S. attorneys and to the Department of Justice to go before a grand jury to see if they want to prosecute these guys. The reason it's such a big deal is 4 of these attorneys that are on this list are personal friends and golfing buddies of the Attorney General. That's a big deal when he couldn't find a way to get out from under it, because I told him that if they involved themselves and tried to stop justice, that I'd come after them too. So, they didn't want to be added to the claim. So, and this claim is a $20 billion claim. It's over 20 now. We estimate it's approaching the mid-20s now. Don't know. I'd have to do some fancy math. That's, I'm from Alabama, and we don't use those kind of figures down there much. But it's probably in the neighborhood of between 20 and $25 billion now because of interest and penalties. And these guys are also facing criminal charges. We own everything they have, literally. I literally own it. And we're going for collections on them right now. And I'm going to teach you how to do that very same thing. It's easy to do, actually. You're going to find out that judges and lawyers are like chickens. If you drop the breadcrumbs or drop the grains of corn, they'll go after them and not pay attention to what's going on around them. And if you'll do it properly, the way I show you, you'll lead them right they'll be in the trap before you run out of breadcrumbs. And you're the only one with the key to unlock the door. And I'm going to show you how that process works. Now, if there's somebody here that's an attorney, I'll probably offend you 50,000 times before the weekend's out. That's okay. Get over it, get used to it. If you're an agent that works for the corporation, then I hope you'll go get an honest job, and I hope you'll support the republic. Because even though you might be an agent, you might still be an American, hopefully, or at least have tendencies to become an American. And so if you're here working for them, then I'm glad you're here. I hope you'll recognize the truth. And if you repeat something I say, tell the truth, because if you don't, God's going to judge your sorry hide. So I'm just telling you up front. Know who your enemy is, because I'm not your enemy. But if you're working for that satanic corporation, he is. And I'll promise you, he's going to win. I might not win, but he's going to win. It's not important for me to win. It's important for me to fight. I call myself a seed planter. What I'm doing is planting the seeds. Some of them are going to grow, some of them are not. But if we plant enough seeds, pretty soon we're going to have a harvest. And sooner or later, enough of the American people are going to get this message, and they're going to stand up, and they're going to stop what's going on. What's going on in our government is a crime. It is criminal. Absolutely criminal. It's evil. And we need to stop it. We need to stand up against it. And I hope that you'll join that fight, and we're going to show you some things that you can do to help do that. Okay. And I will try to stand still as much as I can. I'm like a caged animal. But yeah. Okay. I want to say something about our information, including on the video and any audios that you take or anything that you get from this seminar. You can share it with anyone. I don't care. You can broadcast this across the planet, as far as I'm concerned. I don't really care. My goal is to get this information to the American people so they can be set free. I don't care if you duplicate it. I don't care as long as you don't sell it. Do not sell my material. If you do, and I find out, I'm going to get my chainsaw out. And I'll cut your legs off with my chainsaw. That's what I tell everybody anyway. Still waiting. I ain't got anybody yet. But the bottom line is please don't take the material and try to sell it and make a hustle off of people. But you're welcome to share it with anybody. I want the people to have this information. And although we do sell some of it and try to help support our Cities of Refuge project that we'll talk about a little bit, we don't mind you sharing the information. I don't care. I really don't care. I want it to be spread across the nation, because if this message gets to the American people, they're going to stand up and take what's rightfully theirs, and we're going to rectify what's wrong in this country. And that's what our goal is. Okay. Let's talk about freedom versus socialism. Now, a Republican form of government is freedom. Abides by God's laws, and they're very, very basic and simple. Abide by the basics. If you don't cause harm to your neighbor or his property, you've violated no laws. In a democratic system of government, it has nothing to do with right or wrong or damage to another party. It has to do with somebody has a statute, regulation, or ordinance somewhere that says you can't do it. Now, the difference between the two is that one gives you freedom and one does not. One takes your freedom. In the socialist or democratic system that we're currently under, you can do a lot of things, but you have to pay a price for it. There's always a fee or a permit or some kind of license required to do everything. Now, I know that a lot of people that are in naturopathic stuff and come to my seminars. Now, they have more success than doctors in a lot of ways. They get a lot better results with no side effects usually, and a lot of these people do, all across the country. They heal people. They make people well, or at least their techniques help people become well. We know God really is the one that heals them, but their body is capable of healing itself if you give it what it needs. But the medical community hates them because they don't make a profit off of it. And so they're always after them. Because of that, because they have a lot of power and wealth, they have laws passed that make it criminal for you to help people. Well, what's wrong with that? Is it against God's law to help people? It's God's commandment to help people. And this is the difference between the democratic system and the republic system. If we lived in a republican form of society and a system, these folks out here that are trying to do naturopathic work and help people would not have any problems. But all over the country, they're trying to put them in jail, fine them, take their license away from them. Why is that? It's because they want total and complete control, and they try to take the money. They've got to make you sick, and if you don't, I'm not a conspiracy nut, as I said, but there's a lot of evidence out there to prove that the medical community actually is trying to make you sick. I just found out just a couple of weeks ago that when I took that anthrax vaccination, that they already had the data that proved that only 13% of the people that took it would survive. The rest would die with leukemia. My own government gave me leukemia with full knowledge and disclosure that they knew about. I ought to be able to, but I doubt you can because they'll cover it up. You can't prove it. The research shows that they knew it, but they won't admit it in their courts. I'm not sure how you'd go after it because, I could probably do it, but my goodness, do you realize what kind of fight I'd have to go through? You got to pick your battles in this stuff. I'd have to spend the rest of my life trying to collect a claim against the government and I wouldn't be able to help you folks. So I had to pick my battles. And that would be a big one. But the bottom line is they knew that. They knew that 13% of the people would, only 13% would survive when they gave us those shots. Is that sick or what? It's sick. It's satanic. It's evil. These people are evil. Why would they do that to me? I never caused them a problem. I was there doing a great job, trying to help people. It's about population control, the big thing. Plus, I was pretty much a free thinker. They probably felt threatened by me. But they knew that data when they gave me the shot. Well, they didn't share that with me, though, or I wouldn't have taken it. What don't they share with you? Have you ever watched these drug commercials? I know you do. And you got a problem with a skin condition. Well, maybe you got psoriasis or some kind of skin condition, but when you read or listen to the disclaimer, your liver's going to fail, your hair's going to fall out, your teeth are going to fall out, you're going to die prematurely, your heart's going to quit, you're going to have all kind of strokes and heart attacks and all this kind of stuff, but your skin will be pretty when you die. It trips me out. I said, my wife was taking some of that stuff. I said, you're taking what? Doctor prescribed it. I said, get off of that junk. I said, it'll cause you to die. But your skin will look nice. And that's the society. We are so brainwashed and we are so programmed in this socialist type mentality that it's a struggle to get out from under. I catch myself sometimes. I have to watch how I think. I've been programmed just like you have, and I have to watch. Now, I've learned how to deprogram myself a lot. And I know when I watch the news, I watch it with a grain of salt, and because I know half of it's not even true, because I was involved in all that stuff and understand it. You know, 5 corporations control all of the news media in America. The news media is used to program you. How many of you just got these new digital TVs? Did you know you're being hypnotized when you watch TV? Yeah, absolutely. They have got the pulse frequencies down to a science where they can actually hypnotize you while you're watching TV now. So if you got one of these new TVs, you're being hypnotized when you watch TV. And they do it for various reasons, but primarily what they do is to encourage you to buy their products. Now, I don't know if you know anything about mass hypnosis, but I studied it in college. I could actually set up a light show up here that would hypnotize you right here, sitting here under the sound of my voice. Yeah. Absolutely, and if they put you in a state of stupor. I just experienced this here. I've never been in a casino. I don't gamble. I'm not a gambler. I came from a family who were professional gamblers, some of my uncles, and they didn't fare too well, most of them. So I decided when I was a young boy, I didn't want to follow after that, so I stay away from that stuff. I don't do it. Don't gamble, period. Never. I don't even buy lottery tickets because I just want to stay away from that kind of lifestyle. But I had a buddy who took me in Missouri one time. He went to this casino. We were going to go out there because they usually have nice buffets out there near the casinos at a reasonable price, so we weren't far from there, 3 or 4 miles from there. So I went with him to the casino to have lunch. Well, after he got through eating, he said, I'm going to walk in the casino for a few minutes. And I said, well, I had never been in one. I just like to go see what it's like. I had never gambled, didn't want to gamble. But I'd just like to go look at it, And so I went in there. I had to sign, get a little ID card and all, went in the casino. And I got in there, I wasn't there 5 minutes. And I went over and tapped him on the shoulder and said, I'm leaving. He said, what you leaving for? I said, because they're using mass hypnosis in this place. He said, what you mean? I said, you hear those musical tones and you see those flashing lights? I said, they're hypnotizing these people and encouraging them to gamble. That's what they're doing. I recognized it right away, but I studied that in law enforcement. They taught me all about that in college. And so I recognized it, but most people don't even know what's happening to them. They're being manipulated. Your mind is being manipulated, and what they do is they use certain tone patterns and certain light patterns to put you in a state where you can't think responsibly. And that will get you into a state where you can't make decisions not to gamble too much because you're having fun. You're having fun. Just keep doing it. And then sooner or later you walk out there with your pockets inside out. I've known very few people that were successful gamblers overall. Sometimes they win and they get the disease and then they, and it is a disease. I had uncles that worked. In fact, one of them was murdered over a card game. And so we try to stay away from that stuff. But the bottom line is the manipulation is being done to you all the time. And if you got one of these new TVs that's very sophisticated and you are being brainwashed if you're watching one of the new digital TVs that they just came out with, why do you think they did away with the old system? Because they wanted to increase their ability to manipulate the masses. That's all it was about. The old system was still working, wasn't it? What was wrong with it? Working just fine. But now they have the ability to brainwash you. How many of you have heard of the Project Bluebeam? Oh man, you ought to read about that. Project Bluebeam. Go on the internet and Google this thing up. It will blow your mind. They can actually make beings appear to you and talk to you, look like they've just descended from heaven right here in this room. Yeah, and they can make you hear it, see it, think it's real. Absolutely. In fact, they're already planning to do a simulation of the second return of Christ. And you'll be able to actually see it. And you'll actually hear Him speak. It'll look real. Look like He's standing right in front of me just like me. Is it real or is it Memorex? I've seen the demonstration on one of them, and it was quite interesting. Look real. But they have technology to do that. Now, that's a fantastic thing to study. You ought to go. So don't believe everything you hear and see, because some of it's not real. So look at the news. Look at the news a little differently. Just because it's on CNN doesn't make it so. But we all know Fox is fair and balanced. Absolutely, it is absolutely fair and balanced. Rupert Murdoch owns Fox News, and he's the only person in history that has been given permission by the Supreme Court to own more than 35% of the media in America. It is against the FCC laws, but he has been given permission. Even though Congress voted that they can't do that, the Supreme Court says he can. And he probably owns at least half of the media in America today. And it's illegal for him to do it, but he's doing it anyway. Well, since when did the law matter? But this is the kind of socialist system, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. Socialism is about total and complete control. And that's all it's about. It has nothing to do with anything but their greed and control. And they want to transfer your wealth to them, and that's all it's aimed at doing. One of the ways that we have promoted socialism in this country is through the public food system or public school system. And if you're a teacher, I'll probably offend you too. But the bottom line is that the public school system has taken and manipulated the minds of the children for a long time. Now, the National Education Association, which is the one that writes the agenda for the school system in the nation, was created by a socialist. He was the first founding member and first president or whatever, leader of it, whatever his position title was, of the National Education Association, was a socialist. His name was Dewey. He's got books written about the glories of socialism. You go Google them up and read them. The guy was absolutely a socialist. Why did we put him in charge of an education association in this country? In 1921? That goes back that long. Every single one of us that are in this building that were educated in America were educated in a socialist education system. Every single one of us. So we've been manipulated all of our lives. It's hard to change that manipulation for a lot of people, but you need to start thinking on your own and thinking independently and not being programmed. If you're going to be a secured party creditor, thought this was interesting. I just got a friend of mine showed me a letter she got from the government. She had sent in some paperwork, and they sent her a letter back. You know, there's a designation now in the status. You have U.S. citizens, you have non-resident aliens, and they got all these. But you know what the newest one is? It's called a Secured Party American, or American Secured Party. Isn't that interesting? They have actually got a designation in national INS for American Secured Party now. So we're making an impact out there. And I thought that was interesting. That came right from the government. I read the letter the other day. I said, wow. I said, they're paying attention to what we're doing. So it's interesting. Taxes, are they lawful or unlawful, legal or illegal? They can be either one, or they can be lawful and illegal, and unlawful and legal at the same time. Right. Well, it can be unlawful to tax you, but if you've got a contract, they can make it legal. And that's the way we operate in this country, is on contracts. And that's going to come into play. I'm going to show you about contracts and how powerful they really are when you understand the basics of contracts and learn how to use them. Now, we're going to talk more about lawful and illegal here in a little bit, and you're going to get a little bit of explanation about all that. Not, you need to go read some study on your own, but I'm going to give you the basics. I'd like to talk about Homeland Security, or the lack of it. Homeland Security is a term that's coined by Adolf Hitler. Why would we be using Hitler-type terms in our nation? Because you got Nazis in the government. We call them neo-Nazis. Yeah, the Bushes. Yeah, primarily the Bushes, the Cheneys, and a number of other people in the government. And it hadn't changed. The puppets in charge are still in charge. The Congress is the puppets, but the real people pulling the strings are in charge of this operation. And we call them the neo-Nazis. And a lot of the things that they were doing in America, have you been watching about the torture thing this week on the news? Now, how sick is that? They even admitted. Now, I heard this rumor a long time, years ago, and had a guy said it was true, but evidently it must have been, because now it's in congressional documents and on TV. I know Fox wouldn't lie about it. It's not torture to take your 9-year-old son and crush his testicles because you won't talk. It's not torture. Well, what in the heck is it? It's not torture to drown you through waterboarding and then revive you and do it again. And they do it repeatedly.
But they torture some people to ask them who's the devil. But they cannot answer because they don't know.
Right, but they torture them. Sleep deprivation for 11 days is not torture. Did you know that? You ever tried it? I've been awake for 5 days and nights. At 9 days, it causes brain damage. Paranoia, you see visions, schizophrenia, all kind of major brain problems after 9 days of sleep deprivation. But 11 days is not torture. These neo-Nazi dogs that are in our Congress that are allowing this to happen need to be taken out of office, and they need to be done that way. Because they can do it to you. Did you know that? And I'm going to show you why here in just a little while. We have soldiers patrolling the streets down in Alabama right now. I had a buddy call me. He said, man, I just came through a dang military roadblock. They got an army tank in the middle of the road out here, and they're stopping traffic at random. They're just picking us and pulling us over and checking us out. I said, did you drive through with your Ron Paul sticker on? I said, I'm going to when I get home. I am. I'm going down there. I'm going to let them pull me. I'm going to make sure I got my Ron Paul stickers everywhere, and I'm going to see what they do. I bet they'll have fun with me. I'm going to have fun with them too, though. Why are we allowing this to happen? Did you know it's illegal for them to do that? Or at least it used to be. The law has been changed. Did you know the Constitution is no good anymore? It's been bypassed. It can't be done away with, but they just bypassed it. They passed laws that circumvent the Constitution. I'm going to show you some of those in just a minute. And some of the people that were involved. But Homeland Security has nothing to do with the security of this homeland and your security in particular. It has to do with total and complete control of the American people. And that's all it is about. I was involved with Homeland Security. I was on one of the teams that helped write some of it. It didn't last long, though, because I asked too many questions. Asked way too many questions to make them comfortable, because it was obvious it was not for the people. It was obvious it was nothing more than total control. Why did we beef up all the airport security that we did? Because terrorists attacked on 9/11? They know terrorists didn't do that. They know they didn't do it. Well, why did they do that? To make you accept new controls. It's mind control. It's what the soldiers are doing in Alabama right now. It's mind control. It's to see what you will tolerate. Well, when I get home, we're going to see what we're going to tolerate, because I'm going to go down there and talk to them. I'm telling you, you need to get your soldiers off the street. You're violation of the law, and we're coming after your butt. And the guy that's over that army post down there, he's going to be under a lawsuit here shortly and threat of his job. I promise you that. I'm not going to tolerate it in my home, because that's just a few miles from where the army base is in the town that I live in, right outside of. So in Ozark, Alabama. I'm not going to tolerate that in my home. Now, are we at war? I'm going to go down and talk to the guy at the military base when I get home. Are we at war? What are soldiers doing patrolling my streets? You know, they've been trying, like cats covering up poo-poo, trying to cover up who gave the order. Nobody seems to know who gave the order. Doesn't matter who gave the order. Respondent superior under the law says that military commander of that post is responsible. He's the man that's in charge, and he's the man that's responsible. So I don't care who gave the order. It's your baby. You're going to have to walk it. I wonder how he's going to feel when he gets 100,000 signatures in a lawsuit against him, class action lawsuit against him as an individual to take all of his property because he violated our constitutional rights of the secured party creditors. Probably not going to like that too well, is he? His career's over. We're going to see to it. Okay. We're going to talk about some presidential executive orders here. And some laws that you might find kind of interesting. And why is the military down there patrolling the streets? They're doing it in several places across the country, by the way, not just there. Well, they were given the ability to do that by the John Warner Defense Authorization Act. Thank God he has retired. That wicked man is no longer in Congress, thank God. But I hope the guy that replaced him is not as bad as he was, because he was an absolute tyrant. He was a socialist. He's a communist. Why he was in Congress is beyond me. But before he left office, he managed to get these things in place a couple of years ago. On October the 17th, 2006, he presented a bill to Congress that was passed that voided the Posse Comitatus Act, allows for militarized police roundups of the civilians in America, and allows for the detention of protesters, illegal aliens, and undesirables in FEMA prisons. Now, I know what a protester is. I know what an illegal alien is. I don't have the definition of an undesirable, but if you look around the room, you'll probably see a few. I imagine that there are many of us in here who could be categorized in that category because we think and we actually read and we understand, so we're dangerous. The Posse Comitatus Act was very important. It was passed to protect the people from the military. Back before the Posse Comitatus Act, if a troop of soldiers came into your town, they could just throw you out of their home and make a command post out of your house, throw you out in the cold and your family. They could take whatever you had. They could take your food, and they did quite often. They could draft your sons and your husband and put him in the military and leave you to survive on your own with nothing. And they did that stuff. And if they resisted, they could shoot them. Right there, shoot them right there. How many people you think resisted after they shot the first couple? Probably not too many. But the Posse Comitatus Act was passed to protect us. It was passed to protect the people from military abuse. It did not allow for the military to police the streets. So why is it going on right now in several places across the country? It's just to see if we're going to tolerate it. Well, I can tell you in Alabama, we're not. We're not going to tolerate it in Alabama. Yeah, they failed to stop it down there. Now, police roundups with the military have not been allowed in a long time in our nation, but it's beginning to start. They just did it right here in Texas after that hurricane last year, remember? Didn't they send the military down there to Galveston Island and round the people up and get them off the island? Yeah, they just did that. Well, I thought it was illegal to do that under the Constitution. But George Bush made sure the Constitution doesn't exist anymore. In fact, in 2004, actually 2005, George Bush made the statement that the Constitution was just nothing more than a GD piece of paper. What most people don't know is that 19 of his Secret Service agents walked out on him that day and left, quit their jobs, because they wanted to support the Constitution. 19 of them walked off the job that day and left him because he said that, because they believe in the Constitution. So not everybody in Washington is against what we're doing. The Military Commissions Act of 2006 removes the right of habeas corpus, gives dictator powers to the president, is enemy combatant status. It can be declared by one single unfounded accusation, redefines torture and allows torture upon American citizens when accused of being an enemy combatant. Torture may be used to the point of major organ failure or death with complete immunity from prosecution for those who do it. They can torture you to death and not even be committing a crime. I was listening to a video or a CD the other day about a guy that he's a professor in law. And he was talking about these law professors out here and what they teach. And there was a guy here that he was talking to who is a very prominent, well-known law professor in one of the major colleges. And he said, you know, he said, is abortion immoral? He said, no, it's not immoral because it's not illegal. There's a law passed, so it's not immoral. He said, well then, if we passed a law that rape and murder was legal, then would it be immoral? He said, no. He said, if the law says they can do it, it's not immoral. He said, boy, you got a messed up opinion about the way things are supposed to be. And this guy teaches law across one of the major universities. So what kind of mindset do we have here? Okay, so we can redefine the law. If we can pass a law that says it's okay to be tortured, it's not immoral now, right? That's the kind of mindset you got in Washington. These people need to be changed. They need to go. Anytime that the law supports torture, which it is right now, I heard the people in Congress talking about it on the news. No, that's not torture anymore. But I can abuse you and kill you, but it's not torture. This is a sick, sick mindset. This is an absolutely evil mindset. And this stuff needs to be stopped. Now they're saying we don't even want to release the records to let these criminals be prosecuted because they're protecting the criminals. And we don't want to do that. Okay, go ahead.